Well, good morning and happy July 1st. So good to be with you this morning for the Jake for the State podcast. Tell you what, I got a lot to cover today. Got some highlights of what's happening around the state. Got some big news coming from myself and a little background on leading up to July 4th. This is a pretty significant July 4th coming up. So looking forward to getting into that. First, I want to kick off today with a little scripture for the day, a quick one. This is coming from Isaiah 60. It says, "Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples, but the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will be seen upon you, and nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising." Powerful verse for me. It was the highlight verse for our event at the Capitol, the Oklahoma Rising event we just did this last weekend. Powerful event. I got to give a big shout out to my wife for organizing it. And let's see. Just cleaning up some technical stuff there. Amazing time. And it really set the precedent for what we're going to be doing across the state. But this was the focal verse, Isaiah 60, verses 1-3. And here's a key thing I want to bring to you this morning is it says, "For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples." Something that God has been speaking to me is, yeah, we know things are dark in certain areas, but it's just darkness. You are the light. We have nothing to fear. We do not fear darkness. We do not tremble. So again, arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. Powerful words. All right, let's get to what's happening around the state. Got a few stories I want to highlight for you, and a little history, like I said, on this upcoming July 4th, big July 4th. And I know that Trump is expecting to celebrate in a big way, not only this time, but coming up next time. But first, let me cover a few highlight stories from around the state. If you remember Next Benedict, it was a tragic story. Regardless of what we might think about his or her, I tend to forget which one is which, is a 16-year-old identifying as non-binary, but died of suicide last year. It came a day after a fight with an Owasso High School bathroom and several other students. But there was a lawsuit filed Thursday, and it accuses the district of Owasso of ignoring reports of bullying and sexual harassment of its students, including Benedict. It claims the district received numerous reports that Benedict was constantly being bullied and harassed by other students based on their gender identity. That was an intentional their pronoun inserted there. This source is Kristen Spellman. I believe this is from the Oklahoman. So the way the media, there's two stories here, the actual story and then the way the story is presented. And it just highlights where our media is, even here in Oklahoma. It gives me concern whenever they cater to the virtue signaling that is required in mainstream media these days. That unless you appropriately assign the preferred pronouns, then you can lose your job in the mainstream media. That's why I love this platform here. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. But the students, it says that Benedict was constantly being bullied and harassed by other students based on their gender identity. Theirs referring to Benedict, the singular person. And they say they refuse to take these reports seriously. The lawsuit says eventually the constant bullying and harassment from Nex's classmates and the indifference and hostility from the school district became too much. Next committed suicide on February 8th, 2024 at just 16 years old. And, tragic. And I think we should all grieve the death of, anyone, human beings, because we value human life. I don't take a hard stance on abortion because I value life, but then minimize the death of someone that I believe is mentally unstable, but nonetheless, their life is valuable. And so we must never lose that as we fight the good fight. Remember that life is valuable, and we do not celebrate the death of anyone, especially a suicide of a teenager who's obviously was disturbed. But the lawsuit here alleges Benedict was first subjected to severe and persistent bullying, harassment, and discrimination at Owasso Public Schools because of, again, their gender identity. Hey, good morning, Teresa. Good to see you this morning. Again, the author of this article, Kristen Spellman, persistently uses the plural pronoun in reference to a singular person, next Benedict. And for those that, subscribe to these types of media, I ask why. And maybe it's because, for the same reason I'm reading it here this morning, you can get some insight into our culture by reading the media sources and listening to the media sources, even here in Oklahoma. But I think you have to do so with discernment, to realize what you're reading and to not be slowly grafted into their assignment and their agenda. Whenever they're using plural pronouns to refer to a singular person, this is problematic. And for the rest of people to just accept that as normal and okay. Well, I don't. That's why I'm calling it out as I'm reading this article. So again, according to the lawsuit, it says Benedict and their family reported the bullying to school staff on multiple occasions. It claims the school district failed to take any adequate or effective measures to stop, prevent, or remedy the abuse. According to the lawsuit, as a result of the ridicule and abuse, Benedict left the district for a short time. When they re-entered, again, we got to highlight it, the absurdity there of using these plural pronouns. When they re-entered the district in March of 2023, court documents say Benedict's mother met with district officials to address Benedict's gender status, the previous abuse, and the expectations of how they should be treated going forward. However, the suit claims the abuse directed at Benedict resumed almost immediately and intensified over the 23-24 school year. The lawsuit says the abuse was so bad and so rampant that Nex would bring it up at home multiple times a week. As before, Nex's mother reported this abuse to school district officials, including a school counselor and assistant principal. Nex's mother made at least 3 separate reports during the fall 2023 semester, but as with previous reports, the school district took no action to address or abate the abuse. So, big question here. I'd love to get your feedback. I got several questions. One is, what is the parent's role and responsibility here when the parent's child is being bullied? The claim is being bullied and abused. What is the parent's role? Now, it does say the parent went to the school and brought this to the attention of the school officials. And good for that parent for doing that, for coming to the school, advocating for their child. So you have to give credit where credit is due. However, it has to be noted that the parent did allow this mental illness to persist in her child. And I'm sure that this is probably done out of pure ignorance. And because I believe we live in a very twisted, depraved culture that is more and more pushing this agenda. I think it's being exposed and there's a big pushback on it, thank God. But, I asked the question, what is the parent's role? Not only on what is happening in school, but what's happening at home. At home, obviously, this mentality, this view of oneself is being allowed and even encouraged. Doesn't say it's being encouraged, but I assume it is. At least it's being supported. Okay. And we have to, and I think we're in that day now where we are refusing to cater and cave to this agenda. And it clearly is an agenda to blur the lines of gender and disrupt the foundation of our culture. But many people who do not have a stable foundation, who weren't raised with the foundation of the Bible and, true authentic faith. I won't say going to church because it's so much more than going to church, but the moral laws of our culture that are rooted in God's word. The people that were not raised by that, now they have children. How are they going to raise them? By what standard will they raise them? And I think that this is a sad story of someone who allows their child to choose something so fundamental that in reality you can't choose, but they allowed them to choose which gender they preferred. And the reality is you can't choose that. This is not a sociological construct as they claim. This is a biological reality. Male and female, XX, XY. And for those who deny that, they live in a fantasy world, truly, where you go on to to take it further, and you see that people are allowing kids to choose to be furries or whatever kind of imaginary creature. And the rest of the people, and here's the big point, everyone else is expected to reaffirm this. Now, a big part of this story is what is the school's responsibility when it comes to bullying of kids that are under this delusion and in this mental state. Here's the thing. The thing about kids is they're mean. They're mean. But they also don't have a filter. You know how it is. I mean, slowly that filter becomes more prominent in their life. But, you take a little toddler and they're just saying everything. They're telling all your family secrets at church. So that filter, it develops as the child develops. But even into high school or junior high, that filter is not fully developed. And kids are going to say stupid stuff. They're going to say what they think. And especially when they get around other kids without that fully developed filter, they're going to say it the way they think it, whether it's right or wrong. Okay. But what do we do now? Now, I'm not advocating bullying at all. Okay. But when it comes to someone who is clearly mentally disturbed, believing they are a they, identifying as non-binary, which is not a reality. And so you're expecting other kids who do not have a filter and are developing in themselves, you're expecting them to be mature enough not to call it out. Again, I'm not advocating bullying, but we have to use some common sense here. I mean, and I think, like I said, the shift is on where things are swinging back. The pendulum, is swung way to the left. And, with this whole gender ideology being pushed down everyone's throats and DEI and CRT. So there's a big pushback. We're now major corporations are now pulling back their DEI policies, universities, schools, and even these issues of gender identity, but it's still very prevalent. And I'm interested in this lawsuit in how this ends up. Again, the family of Next Benedict. Next Benedict was a 16-year-old who identified as non-binary, committed suicide last year, tragically, after being bullied after a fight in a Owasso high school bathroom. And again, I'm pointing out the fact that the article writing about it is still referring to Next Benedict as a they, which is tragic in and of itself when it comes to how media is reporting this. Let me give you some more details on this lawsuit. It says, after leaving the school, Benedict was taken to the hospital to be treated. The following afternoon, Benedict collapsed inside their home. Again, using there in reference to Next Benedict. They were rushed to the hospital where they were pronounced dead. So following Benedict's death, the U.S. Department of Ed Office of Civil Rights. They opened an investigation. The lawsuit noted the Office of Civil Rights investigation revealed a widespread pattern of inappropriate responses from the school district to allegations and evidence of sexual harassment, and that such failures were known to school district policymakers all the way up to the Board of Education. The lawsuit also quotes the findings stating OCR, that's the Office of Civil Rights, also determined that based on the established pattern of inconsistency in district responses to reports of sexual harassment, the school district responded with deliberate indifference to some families' sexual harassment reports. The lawsuit claims the school district could have prevented this tragedy had it taken sexual harassment and bullying seriously. Well, the tragedy here is, number one, the death of this 16-year-old, and also the allowance of the 16-year-old to believe something about, and I apologize, I honestly don't remember if Next Benedict was a biological girl or biological male, and this can get so twisted. And so I'll refrain from using any pronouns just because I literally don't remember. But the point I wanted to highlight is bring your attention first to this lawsuit, because this lawsuit could be consequential. They're always consequential in setting precedent. So if they succeed in doing this, how many more lawsuits will follow from parents who are allowing their children to believe they are non-binary, or that their gender is fluid, or they can change their sex, or they can change their gender. They're allowing this in their home, no solid foundation that these kids are being raised in. And then they're being sent to school where they're being bullied. And then, I think lawsuits can arise whether they commit suicide or not, just by the fact that they're being bullied or even sexually harassed. So the whole thing is very tragic, but it points to a cultural issue. This highlights an issue in the media in their persistence of using a plural pronoun to refer to a singular person, which is just furthering this insanity in our culture. I will not subscribe. I do subscribe to some liberal publications to get the latest on what's happening, to get the liberal biased view on things. So I do subscribe to several, both in the state and then major ones like the New York Times and such. And it's really just to get an idea of what's being talked about and how it's being talked about. It's important that you read these kind of articles to know how certain segments of our society are still adhering to and accepting and allowing and supporting this kind of insanity, which is the gender identity push. There, like I said, there's a big pushback against it, but it's still very prevalent. And I'll be watching this lawsuit to see the turnout of this, because, like I said, it will set a precedent. And if they do succeed in suing Owasso Public Schools for the wrongful death of Next Benedict, this could set a precedent in the state, and we might see a whole new slate of lawsuits that are seeking to do the same thing. So big story there, I think. I'm just checking in. Good to see you, Nick. Let me see. I want to get to some of the comments. Nick said the lawsuit may be better directed to the medical community, who likely encouraged the single parent to enable her child to live out this psychosis. It's a great point, Nick. What about the medical community that has allowed this, that is supposed to be rooted in science? The medical community is supposed to be rooted in science, yet they are affirming this delusion as well, and this psychosis. I think that's a good term for it. Well, Nick, you also said the school district may have liability for allowing this child to attend school with this mental challenge and not foreseeing the risk to this child and providing protection. Another great point, Nick. Where is the school district's liability in allowing this psychosis to persist and affirming that? Maybe we need some lawsuits in the other direction. And how is the allowance of this influencing and impacting the classroom dynamics? Again, I am not advocating bullying. We teach our children to be respectful, even of those that we disagree with. And so I would never, in my own house with my own children, allow them to mock or ridicule anyone who thinks or believes differently. Okay. But I know that's not the norm. And I know that a lot of kids, they are just mean and they don't have that filter, like I said. And so, what are our expectations of them if they are not being taught proper etiquette at home, and then they're faced with someone who is claiming to be something in a fantasy world? I mean, if they're coming to school like we're hearing testimony. I've never seen this, but I hear testimony of the furries. I mean, are we expecting the other children just to sit back and nod and accept it as reality? Are we expecting them not to say anything hurtful to that person? That's far-fetched. I would expect any teenager or even any junior high kid or even in elementary school, if their classmate is pretending to be a furry, it would be very abnormal not to have bullying or hurtful statements made in that classroom, I would think. And then again, how does it apply to someone who is assuming a gender neutral stance, assuming a plural pronoun, and then requiring others to also use that pronoun? My hope and my prayer is that there are kids who are mature enough to show the love of God to a kid like this, and hopefully lead them out of delusion and point them to the truth, so they can have stability. They can understand truly who they are and how beautiful they are, the way God made them. That's my prayer, is that there's more children like that in schools who won't be bullying, but will actually love on people like this, like Next Benedict. Roberta, I agree. You say we need to teach our children how to disagree respectfully. When grown adults refuse to even do it, they repeat what they are seeing. Yeah, 100%. It starts at the home. And I'm going to beat that drum as long as I can. It starts at home. So I'm going to really prioritize the restoration and the protection of the nuclear family. I want to shift gears here. Keep the comments coming if you have any thoughts on this Next Benedict case or the gender insanity that we've been seeing over the last few years. But I'm going to shift gears here to another important story here in Oklahoma, and that is dealing with Medicaid. Oklahoma cuts, let me read this right. Oklahoma cuts, they cost Oklahoma hospitals $8.7 billion. And according to recent reports from last month in June, it is last month, by the way, we are officially in July 1st. And I have some big news that I'm going to tell you in just a second that has to do with my campaign that happens today. Okay. So recent reports from June 2025 indicate that Oklahoma hospital leaders are expressing concerns that potential federal Medicaid cuts, which they say could result in a significant loss of funding for hospitals in the state. Now, we've been talking about this for a while. Of course, I was not a fan of the Medicaid expansion here in Oklahoma. But now we are seeing why it was not a good idea. Linking ourselves up with the federal promise to cover 60% of the bill for Medicaid. Now the federal government, with the DOGE effort, which I fully support, is wanting to cut back and do less spending. I agree with that too. But now we're locked in. We've painted ourselves into a corner here in the state. Now we got a potential $8.7 billion loss. So members of the Oklahoma Hospital Association warned that proposed federal Medicaid cuts could reduce federal reimbursements to Oklahoma hospitals by $8.7 billion over the next decade. And obviously this will have an impact on access to care, which we have such a great need for that, especially in rural Oklahoma. But also we're talking about job cuts within hospitals, service reductions. The proposed cuts could lead to the elimination of nearly 15,000 jobs in the state and potential hospital closures. That federal money, that government money is all good until it goes away. You get dependent on it, and then suddenly there's a shift. There's a new policy. And if you are dependent on the government, you are in a very fragile state. And our hospitals became very dependent on the government, obviously. And now they're at risk of closure. This highlights rural hospitals as well, which are already struggling in the state. But they're going to be particularly affected by this change in Medicaid at the federal level. And let me give you a little bit of context here. So we're talking about Medicaid funding. Of course, Medicaid is the federal program that subsidizes health care for low-income and disabled individuals. With the Trump budget bill, the proposed cuts are being considered as part of President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill in the U.S. Senate and part of the reconciliation process. And the Senate is preparing to vote on this bill. Hospitals are concerned about the potential negative impact on their operations and patient care. While the Senate parliamentarian ruled against including most Medicaid changes in the budget reconciliation bill, Senate leadership could potentially reintroduce the provisions as separate legislation or vote to ignore the ruling. This issue of the parliamentarian is an interesting case. An Obama-appointed parliamentarian that is really dictating the direction of this big, beautiful bill. And, there's lots of concerns there. But like this says, the Senate could opt to separate this legislation out of the big, beautiful bill and still address it as a singular legislation. Or they could vote to overrule that ruling from the parliamentarian and keep this Medicaid cut in the bill. So we have, of course, the Oklahoma Sooner Select program, and we, of course, transitioned to managed Medicaid through this Sooner Select program, and it includes Supplemental Hospital Offset Payment Program. It's called SHOP, SHOPP, the Supplemental Hospital Offset Payment Program. And it uses hospital fees to draw down additional federal funding and incentivize quality improvement. So they say quality improvement with the federal funding. So again, we have painted ourselves in a corner here with this dependence on the federal money, and not a good place to be. I got some insight on lobbyists. First, I'm going to look at your comments coming in. And John Boy, good morning, John Boy. It says, it does not help when you have fraud being done in the medical fields. For the few who do it are harming everyone. No, it's so true. It does happen. But here's my thought is, if we got back to common sense and the basics of doctors getting into the field for the right reason, and that is to help people. And I long for the day where we see a resurgence in medical doctors opening up their own practices in local communities to serve the people around them. We've gotten so far away from that. And now it's this huge corporate interests, the trifecta cabal with the big insurance and the big pharma and the big corporate hospitals. And even the doctors and healthcare providers are just lost in the system. They are moved about like pawns, not truly able to practice medicine and help people, but it's all dependent on what insurance will approve and the latest drug that big pharma is being pushed, that is pushing. So the whole system is so screwed up. And we are seeing more move back to direct patient care and move towards the concierge model. That's where we go personally. We prefer that. We pay a monthly fee, then we just go whenever we need to for basic care. And that's in our small local communities. So I like that model, and I think that it is a return back to the reason doctors should be practicing medicine in the first place. We've gotten so far away from that. Now, we have so much rampant fraud. I do have a story on that. I don't think I'll have time to get to it today, but highlighting this rampant fraud in our hospitals. And, there's recently I don't know if you call it a bust, but a discovery of massive fraud I'm probably shouldn't try to pull it up here. I'll get to it at another time. No, that's a different one. I'll get to it another time. But yeah, absolutely, John Boy, I agree with you. The rampant fraud only hurts the system, but the system itself is corrupt. And actually, I believe the system is encouraging this fraud and allowing the possibility for this fraud. Whereas if we get back to what medicine is really supposed to be about, then I think the potential for that fraud dramatically declines. All right, I'm going to highlight this last thing for today, and then I'm going to give you some news on what I'm doing and how you can be a part of it. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Oklahoma lobbyist spent more than $220,000 on food, beverages for lawmakers during the 2025 legislative session. The $222,300 in spending reported from January 1st to May 31st is a 13.6% increase from the first 5 months of 2024. 10 years ago, in 2015, it was about 97,000. That's a dramatic increase. 97,000 10 years ago to $220,300 this last legislative session. The transactions range from $3 at McDonald's to $207 at the upscale Mickey Mantle Steakhouse in downtown Oklahoma City. And of course, it's according to this article, you can look at the full list using the Ethics Commission Guardian system. Oklahoma Watch has often reported on the influence of lobbyists at the capitals. They're required to disclose how much they spend on which elected official and can't spend more than $500 per elected official each calendar year. Yeah, John Boy, you make a good point. Is this 223,000 was reported? How much was not? Very good point. So this says lobbyists are required to disclose how much they spent. They can't spend more than $500 per elected official each calendar year, and they don't have to disclose what issue or bill was discussed during the meal or meeting. Lobbyists maintain they're needed at the Capitol. Of course they maintain that. Maintain they're needed at the Capitol to help educate a term-limited legislature on a variety of issues. Yeah, that is the issue, is that lobbyists feel like they need to educate legislators. And there are some well-intentioned, good lobbyists up at the Capitol. I met many of them. However, there's an agenda. There is an agenda, whether it's good or bad, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, there is an agenda driving their kindness. And so that's what's so nefarious about the Capitol, the culture up there, is you just don't know who someone really is, whether they're an elected official or they're a lobbyist, because there's an agenda behind it. There's an agenda behind their smile. There's an agenda behind their kindness. And it's hard to get to an authentic person and understand who they really are. But this says lobbyists maintain they're needed at the Capitol to help educate a term-limited legislature on a variety of issues. There's more than 300 registered with the Ethics Commission, representing interests from oil and gas to healthcare to newspapers and news organizations. And that's why I appreciate several stalwart conservatives like Representative Tom Gann, Representative West, who have made the commitment to take no lobbyist money or accept gifts or meals. That, I slowly learned about this when I was in office and started to see some of my colleagues that I respected and aligned with not going out to dinner. I was going out to dinner and I thought it was this is what you do. And I wasn't fully aware of the impact and the influence of lobbyists at the time. And so enjoyed a few steak dinners. And then I started asking my colleagues who were not going why they were not going. And they helped me with this revelation of understanding there's an agenda behind it, that they're going to be pushing your legislation. And honestly, to be truthful, at the table with other legislators, there was always good conversation to be had. But here's the big issue, is the appearance of evil. Yeah, good point, Leslie. I should have mentioned Senator Warren Hamilton also not taking those gifts and contributions. my good friend and fellow former colleague in the Senate. And he's actually the one that I was referring to, the one that actually educated me on what's behind this. And like I was saying, there's actually a lot of good conversation that happens at the table and good discussion on bills, but it's avoiding even the appearance of evil. So I stopped going to those meetings as well, because, number one, it was taking me away from my family, and we could have those same discussions up at the Capitol in our office. We didn't have to have it over a steak dinner. And, number two, it's the appearance of evil. It's the appearance that you are being swayed and moved by money, by special interest groups, rather than your constituents and their true concerns. So I stopped going to that, and I would encourage others to follow the lead of Senator Hamilton and Representatives Gann and West. I think that by not going and not participating, it loosens the power and the hold that lobbyists have over our legislators. That's why I'm personally in this governor's race. I've made the commitment not to take any lobbyist money or PAC money or special interest money. That's the reason why I wanted to be very clear that I'm not bought out, that I'm accountable only to God and the people of Oklahoma. And very few people can make that claim because they minimize it. It's not that big a deal. I'm going for the right reasons. This is a good lobbyist group with good intentions. Okay. But in the end, what does it look like? Even if there's no nefarious intent there, what does it look like? And for that reason, I'm making the commitment not to accept those meals, those gifts, those contributions. And I want people to have the utmost confidence that I have their best interest in mind. Speaking of that, big news for me today, going to the Capitol to officially file to run for governor of Oklahoma. And I'm very excited. I originally had said June 30th. But then someone informed me, you sometimes have to shift your decisions based on new information. And the new information was, if I wait until today, if I filed yesterday or in June, then I would be required to file a report within a matter of days. But now that I do it on July 1st, it's going to give me until the end of October. And so I step into that next time period that goes all the way to the end of October. I won't have to file a report until then. So I thought there was wisdom in that. Time for us to collect ourselves and get organized and actually have some things to report. So I will be filing today, going up to the Capitol and laying down the change and signing my signature and signing up officially. So I'm very excited about that. And my family will join me. They asked me, they're like, do we really need to be there? I'm like, well, you don't need to be there, but you only signed to run for governor, sometimes only once in your life. And, it's a special time for us. We're going to bring our family. We're going to have some good prayer before. And, we've been praying through this whole process, and we're really excited about jumping in full bore here. I've made the shift, obviously, doing the broadcast here and stepping away from the station. This is just in its infant stages. We're going to grow and expand this platform. And I have some other platforms I'm working on that I will be releasing here soon. But that'll all work in conjunction with the campaign. So as we go across the state, I'll continue covering stories and issues that impact us here in Oklahoma. And by doing so, I'm going to learn more about what's happening in the state. And I believe that will better serve me when elected to the seat of governor. So I appreciate your celebration, Heather, and all of y'all's support. So please, like Leslie's saying there, just tag your friends, share this. This is going live on YouTube, and you can find this on YouTube, the Jake for the State YouTube channel. I also have some mini clips there, some 1-minute clips that just highlight some of my issues, like how do I feel about surveillance or infrastructure or abortion. Well, I have some 1-minute clips on there that I explain that in brief detail. And you can find that at the Jake for the State YouTube page. Go there and like and subscribe, because whenever I have a new video come out, it will automatically remind you. It's also going live on Facebook today. And I couldn't get Rumble to work this morning, and for some reason a glitch with X. So I'm working on those other platforms, but I am live on YouTube and Facebook this morning. But also, we are putting together a volunteer day I want to make you aware of. And let me make sure I have the right details here. But I'm really excited about this whole campaign, but I look forward to our times with the volunteers. It's really a special time. And let me we just set these dates yesterday. So we're looking at our first one in Chickasha, July 7th. It's going to be a Vital Church from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, so write that down. July 7th, especially if you're in Grady County or Chickasha. I'd love to meet you if you're interested in being a part of this campaign. Our first stop is Chickasha, the county seat of Grady County. And God is doing some big things there. So we're going to start off in Chickasha. July 7th is the volunteer meeting, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that's at Vital Church. And then we're going to have one up in Oklahoma City at Great Faith Church. I love that we can do this, that church has become the hub of campaigns like this. I love that pastors are courageous and bold and wanting to be engaged in the political process. So July 14th, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., Great Faith Church. It's on Northwest Expressway. The address is 8921 Northwest Expressway. Great Faith Church, July 14th. So we have July 7th, July 14th, 2 critical volunteer meetings. If you want to be a part, please come. And we're going to give you info and insight on what is happening in the campaign. But man, we are going to change culture. We're going to see a statewide revival. We're going to see reformation in the culture and the right form of government set in place. That's what I'm excited about. I am not getting in this to maintain the status quo. I'm getting in here to disrupt and to change things and return power and freedom back to the people. That's what it's all about. And, we will open it up for donations. That's a new development. We have so many people that want to be involved but can't, and they want to donate to this mission. So we said, okay, we're going to do that. I would have loved to run a campaign on zero money just to push back and challenge the status quo and this idea that you have to be a millionaire to run for office. But we're going to do it at a grassroots level. We're going to take individual donations from Oklahomans, and that'll be available shortly after I file. So I've already contacted my tech guy that does my website. He'll open up that option on the website where you can go there, jakemerrickforgovernor.com. Nice and long, but easy to remember. jakemerrickforgovernor.com. That 4 is FOR. jakemerrickforgovernor.com. And, shortly after I file, we'll have the option to donate. So if you want to go there and give to the campaign, you can do that. I still have to set up the bank account. So there'll be a little bit of a lag there. As soon as the bank account is open and active, then we'll be able to receive donations. Up to this time, we have not received donations for the campaign, and we will not receive donations from PAC or lobbyist money through the duration of the campaign. It'll be up to the people. So we have to do this together. If we all want the same thing, I'm willing to put myself out there and run, but we've got to link arms and run together. So I appreciate you guys. The Heather, you're referring to the Remnant Church of God. I'm not sure what that is, so you'll have to explain more there. But Leslie just posts the link on the chat there, so you can get that. But hey, that's all for today, guys. I wanted to just highlight some critical stories that are happening in Oklahoma, and I'll be doing it again tomorrow, same time, same place, 7 a.m. I'll be here streaming every morning, and I love to engage with you in the conversation. So keep those conversations coming. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me at jakeforthestate.com. No, that's not right. That's jakeforthestate@gmail.com. jakeforthestate@gmail.com. Email me, and I'd love to get to know you, hear your concerns. We're putting together another show where we're going to drill down on issues. It's a paneled show with me and 4 experts in a particular field. We're going to drill down, get some answers on some issues. I'm calling it Drill Baby Drill. So that's going to be coming soon. I'm really excited about that. But you can stay up to date on everything that we're doing. If you email me, I can put you on the newsletter, and I'm going to send out a daily newsletter to keep everyone up to date. I'll be sending one out today to let everybody know that I've officially filed. But thank you for tuning in. God bless you guys. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.